Hello everyone. So today I'm going to do a book review on the book Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela. So this book was published October 1st, 1995 by Back Bay Books. The page count is 751 pages long, and I want to thank Brooklyn Library for lending this book to me. So this book is about Nelson Mandela, who is a renowned political figure. He is an international hero, and he had a lifelong journey to liberate his people from racial oppression in South Africa and eventually become the first Black president of South Africa. Nelson Mandela spent a quarter century in prison, and then he had a triumphant release in 1990. After his release, he was able to establish the first fully democratic election in South Africa and end the Apartheid regime. The book opens up with Mandela's life in a small village of Kunu. At the time, it was under the regent of Tambo. He was actually a foster child of a Tambo chief. Mandela grew up in between two worlds. He had the traditional culture of his tribe of Sosha and the hostile white majority in South Africa. He gravitated a career towards law. However, he became more interested in becoming actively engaged in the racial problems in South Africa, which eventually led him to join the African National Congress. My actual favorite parts of the book was probably between 5 and 7. This was when he was actually deep in his prison sentence, and we learn about the actual institutionalized racism that was in the system. So if you don't know that in South Africa, they have different races that we know in America, at least that's what I know in America. They have Indians and colored, and what they created was Africans. He actually talks about when he was growing up, essentially, there were so many different tribes in South Africa, so no one really called themselves African. They were associated between their tribe. So once, apartheid was really in full force, they were calling all Black people essentially Africans, and then colored people, who were mixed, and Indians. There was a lot of Indian population that actually came into South Africa during this time. He noticed that there was a big racial discrimination going on that was institutionalized. And the Indian and colored people got a better treatment and a better diet than the actual African Black people in the prison, and essentially white people got the best diet and treatment. Indians and colored people got more rations that were more nutritionally balanced, and the African people got a lot less. Essentially, Africans weren't even given any type of bread rations, and they were given less sugar for their coffee. And then Mandela did not like this, and he actually fought against it, and took many, many years for the actual prison system to even give them more of like a, I would say, equal balance between Indians, Black people, and colored. But it took many years for him to fight for that. And not only just diet he fought for, he actually fought to have his own garden. For a while he was in prison, he was very, very lonely, and he got really connected with gardening, and essentially they did not allow him to have his own garden, but eventually they did relent, and they let him have his own vegetable garden that he tended to. But he also talks about the access to information. Some of the prisons that he was in for many years, they couldn't have any books, they couldn't get any letters, and they especially could not have any news. He talked about how news to prisoners was essentially gold. Learning about what was going on in the outside world was vital and integral to the fights that he was trying to fight against. So he, within the prison system, he was still fighting for the equality for his people and for all people, essentially. What he learned was apartheid wasn't just affecting Black people, Indian people, and colored people. It was affecting everyone, white people included. If someone has to be put down for one to be standing up, no one is truly free. And that's like a common theme throughout the entire book. And that's kind of what kept him going, even in this hard 27 years in prison. He never lost hope to his dreams. He was still fighting to essentially get that out there, that we need to get rid of apartheid because this is affecting our full nation, affecting our full people. One of my favorite things also during his like prison sentence, he was still staying very fit. He talked about how he would work out every day. In his cell, he would do push-ups, he would run in place, he would do sit-ups. And that's actually a common theme in a lot of the memoirs that I've read. You know, like Cicely Tyson talked about how she would eat a very like well vegetable-based diet, and she would work out very often. She would walk everywhere. Will Smith, he talked about how he was very interested in keeping his body very fit for all the roles that he could keep up with early on in his career. You know, this is something I've learned, that a lot of successful people, you know, they really value the diet. You know, to have a successful career, but also a successful mind, it does start in the kitchen. And sometimes the circumstances does make it difficult to maintain a healthy diet. You know, he was in jail and he wasn't giving well-balanced nutritional meals, but he actually fought to actually get those. You know, sometimes we have to really go out of our way to live a healthier life, but you know, ultimately it does pay off. And I really appreciate him for specifying that in his memoir. So I decided to read this book because I actually, read the Will Smith book. I actually have a video to that in the bottom. And in Will Smith's book, he mentioned how he was so honored and humbled to have such a powerful leader like Nelson Mandela request that Will Smith come to South Africa to meet him. You know, I feel like that showed how down to earth and humble Mandela was. You know, he was this powerful leader who really ended the apartheid essentially, but he's still just a regular man. He always specified that in his book. He was like, I am one of the people, you know, I don't think I'm above y'all. I don't think I'm anything different from y'all. I am y'all, and I'm fighting for you guys. And I thought that was just, you know, so beautiful, you know, to see such a powerful leader remain resilient and very humble throughout his whole fight to honestly get racial liberation from apartheid. The big takeaways that I got from this book include sacrifice, hope, and teamwork. So Mandela really had to sacrifice his family time in order to win liberation for the African people. He fully admitted his faults in his family. You know, he was really not there for them because he was often fighting to get racial segregation eradicated, and he wasn't there for his family. Unfortunately, he wasn't really there to see his kids grow up, and he was in prison for 27 years. So he, you know, had definitely had issues with his wife. You know, there was some divorces in there. There was deaths that he wasn't even able to experience. And you know, from his tribe, you know, deaths, marriage, and his children getting married, he has to often do a couple of rituals in order to perform certain tasks. And because of his devotion to his dream, he wasn't able to, you know, participate in that, and that was really hard on him. And he really had to choose between his loved ones and fighting for the greater good. So hope, you know, Mandela was hopeful during his 27-year sentence in prison. You know, he never let go of his true dreams, which was to have a fully Black majority government, but also to liberate his people from apartheid. You know, in prison, there were times where he was almost broken. You know, he talks about how he was very lonely, where he even wanted bugs to essentially talk back to him. Like, he really had no one to talk to him for a while. He was very lonely. He couldn't even get letters from his family. They reduced visits from him for several months, even years at the time. And he still remained hopeful. You know, he was well determined. He knew, and in a way, he didn't think he was going to leave prison, but at the same time, he was still hopeful that one day he was able to get out and continue his work in National African Congress. And teamwork, you know, Mandela loves to make it clear throughout the book that he got to accomplish all his dreams because he was not alone. You know, he had several people backing him up. And there's this famous African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. And I feel like that is a great theme to compare to this book, because even when he was in prison fighting for the meals, he got several of the prisoners to actually abstain from eating for weeks. And, you know, this worked. You know, it was definitely really difficult to not eat at all, especially being in prison with already so many different things going on. He specified how he really needed people around him to help him carry out his goals, and we all do. You know, sometimes we forget that these great leaders and these heroes, essentially, we think that they got there on their own, but we have to look around at the team who helped them get there and who are still helping them to this day. And I thought that was, you know, very, very groundbreaking and very beautiful. And I'm glad he actually was able to recognize that and make it very clear throughout the whole entire book. I highly, highly recommend this book. You know, Long Walk to Freedom is an emotive and compelling story. It is honestly a must read. You know, I definitely give it a 5 out of 5. This is definitely a story that you don't hear about as often, and this is someone who essentially broke a curse in a country that he grew up in that wasn't even really considered a country at the time. You know, everyone was living in their tribes, and then we had colonization come in and then create all these different barriers, and he essentially had that, I don't want to say rags to riches, because that's not even what it was. He was just a young African man who had a dream and saw that his people were not being treated fairly in the land that they grew up in. You know, that was their land. And I feel like I was so interested in this book because I'm African American, and you know, we have very similar stories, but a lot of my ancestors were brought to this country rather than they were already living to this country, and they had interlopers, colonizers come in there and start stealing the land and stealing resources and demanding a whole new government and everyone just to go with it. You know, I feel like that's a very unique story, and I was just so interested in how he was able to accomplish so many things and break down that government. I can go on for hours talking about this story, but this was certainly definitely the most powerful book I've ever read. It took me some time to get through it because I had to stop and like really think about a lot of things he was describing. You know, this was like 70 years ago, some of the stuff he was fighting for, and these are things that we are still fighting for around the world. And you know, it's things that we still have to fight for, but it's worth it. You know, it's what has to be done. And I'm so grateful that this book is out there. It's also a movie too. I haven't seen the movie. Maybe I'll watch the movie soon. I can do like a little review of both of them together, but I highly, highly recommend this book. Okay, so thank you so much for watching my review on Long Walk to Freedom. Please let me know if you guys read the book. Please like, comment, share, and let me know if you want me to do any reviews on any books that you've read recently. Thank you.